Hi, Mark. Sorry for the delay. We have you on my cell phone, so I'm hoping this works out okay.
Okay, everything's fine. Otherwise, it's still being recorded and everything.
Yes.
So Bob, Dave, and Chelsea are present in the assembly chambers?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, with that, we will call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. Will you please call the roll?
Count down.
Five.
Again, 5, 4, 3.
Now we'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Jay? Jay?
Is that me?
Yes.
Here. Very, very spotty to hear you.
Okay. Taylor? Taylor?
Taylor? Excuse. Yeah, the connection's pretty weak, Debbie.
I don't know what to do.
Would it be better to have it on this speaker?
Much better there.
Was that better?
Debbie, why don't you put yourself
Yeah.
over by clerk's?
Maybe we're going to try moving the cell phone. Okay. How does that sound? Can you hear me better? Okay.
Will we be able to hear the participants from the assembly chambers, Bob, Dave, and Chelsea?
Go ahead and say something, guys.
We'll test.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
We're present.
Okay, let's try this again. I'll start the roll again. Jay?
Present.
Taylor?
Excused.
Chelsea?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
Dave?
Here.
Okay, we have 6 assembly members today. We have 1 excused, member Norheim, and we have 3 assembly members in the assembly chambers. And that being said, it's now time for the voluntary pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. Item 4, amendment and approval of today's meeting agenda. If there's no amendments, I would entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll move forward with the meeting agenda as presented. It already has been amended a little bit. The next item on the agenda, Board of Equalization. There was one appellant, and they met with the assessor this morning, and they settled that appeal. So we will move to public hearings. Item 6, there are no public hearings today. Item 7, there are no bid awards. That brings us to item 8, which is persons to be heard related to the agenda. And before we get started with that, we've had a couple of emails about issues on today's agenda. We had 2 emails about 15 minutes ago, people asking the clerk to read the emails. We don't read the emails, and those will be on our next agenda under communications. So, Clerk Magula, will you please unmute the first caller, or have Scott do that, and keep time at 5-minute time limit.
Yes. Scott, would you please unmute Eric Lee?
E-line is now open.
Yeah, this is Eric Lee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. My comments address agenda item 16D, the Tongass Road Rule exemption. And When the roadless rule was last discussed by the Assembly a year or two ago, I talked about the importance of noting the changes we see around us right here in Petersburg as a result of the habitat loss and climate change. I talked about the absence of the thrush's call we used to hear on summer evenings. I only heard that beautiful call a couple times last summer. The thrush's call is our canary in the coal mine, and that voice is fading away. I talked about the abundant deep deer population on our island that used to supply the town with the subsistence food we needed, back before the island was so extensively roaded and logged. I talked about the dangers our forests are facing due to the extreme weather events caused by climate change. The landslides we have had recently are a confirmation of those concerns. A year or two ago, a big slide in Sitka destroyed homes and killed 2 people. This year, 2 more people were killed by a big landslide in Haines. There were 2 slides in Juneau and a big one near us in Petersburg on Tonka Mountain. All this during the short time since we last discussed the roadless rule. These recent slides are no coincidence. They are the direct result of extreme rainfall events that will become ever more frequent due to climate change. I talked about the danger of windfalls, trees blown down by increasingly high wind events that come with climate change. Driving the Coff Highway between the Swan Observatory and Pines Blue Creek, one can see what is happening throughout the tunnel. Trees that have been standing a century or more are now being blown down by increasingly high wind events. Mother Nature can't speak to us in words. We have to listen and look around us to hear what she is trying to tell us. The signs are around us right now. Anyone who looks will see how nature is changing. We cannot go on as we have in the past. We must make changes to protect the forest. The roadless rule makes such changes in a very sensible way. Language in the roadless rule is aimed specifically at preventing the construction of logging roads in areas that have not already been roaded. It does not prevent the development of infrastructure projects in the roadless areas. What it does do is make the permitting process for such projects more thorough, which is necessary to ensure the health of the forest. This is as it should be if we are to protect the forest that we're all depending on. So I urge the Assembly not to participate in any effort to continue the extension of the conflict from the roadless rule. Thank you very much for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your testimony today, Mr. Lee. Becky?
Yes, Scott, would you please unmute Becky Knight?
Hi there, it's Becky Knight. I'll just continue talking unless you can't hear me. If my records are correct, the Petersburg Borough Assembly twice considered a resolution regarding the roadless rule in 2018 and 2019, once in support and once in opposition to the exemption. Both resolutions died for a lack of a majority vote, so the borough has failed to weigh in on the exemption one way or the other. A decision today to intervene would be inconsistent with the borough's failure to take a position and, in my view, a waste of precious public funds. And I might note that the city or borough of Wrangell also noted the same thing and did not intervene. Moreover, according to recent research, the Tongass National Forest holds 44% of all carbon stored by United States national forests. Our old-growth forest provides this service for free. According to Dr. Delasallo and and his colleagues, they were the primary researchers on this. Basically, when you go through an old-growth forest, you're walking through a stick of carbon that has been built up into the forest for many decades, or many centuries. Delasallo and the largest trees in those forests store about 50% of the above-ground carbon. So they are enormously important from a carbon standpoint. During an era when climate change is a huge concern to life on Earth as we know it, any decision to vote to intervene in favor of the exemption would fly in the face of our need to stem the impending climate catastrophe. Moreover, there are thousands of miles of roads on the Tongass, with hundreds of road crossings that currently impede fish migration upstream. The Forest Service lacks the will and the budget to repair those crossings on a comprehensive scale. On that point alone, such a vote to intervene in favor of intervention would be inconsistent with supporting the fishing industry within the borough. And I might also note that public support was overwhelmingly in favor of keeping the roadless rule in place. It was something along the lines of 95% public comments received. So I think the borough should just stand down on this one, save the $5,000, and put it to a much better use. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony today. Becky?
There are no other callers.
Okay, thank you. We'll move us on to item 9, persons to be heard unrelated to items on today's agenda. Are there any callers in the queue for that?
There are no callers.
Okay, thank you. That moves us on to item 10, board, commission, and committee reports. There's nothing under that item. Consent agenda, item 11, there's nothing. Report of other officers, that brings us to the Petersburg Medical Center CEO, Phil Hofstetter. Phil, can you hear us all right? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. It's a little scratchy here and there, but you're sounding very, very clear.
Okay. I'll keep it brief. So just a couple of follow-up items. Last assembly meeting, the work session with the hospital board and the assembly that was approved was put forth to the PMC board, and we also approved that agenda item and the date. So that should be the April 28th, I believe, from 5 to 7 p.m. Additionally, with COVID response, we have been continuing with testing, both symptomatic and asymptomatic, and providing free testing for the community. Our priority has been vaccines, so we have our last, I believe, large vaccine point of dispensing in the community gym this Friday. Otherwise, we're going to be doing vaccines on a more regular basis in our clinic, and encourage any of those that are interested or to sign up and get on the waiting list. Other than that, our big focus has been wellness. We're trying to get folks in for their cancer screenings and prevention, looking at the future and trying to make sure that we're getting everyone in for addressing any of their care issues, health maintenance. We have been focused on, as we're turning the corner on this, looking at our staffing. We've had quite a bit of turnover, and we're looking at a lot of burnouts, and so we're trying to address internally some improvements and addressing some of those levels of staff turnover, burnout as coming out of the COVID response. The funding, we continue to monitor for funding as the new administration has released some of the equivalents of that CARES Act funding for this year. It's got a different term. It escapes me at the moment. And then also we're looking at the future of healthcare in the community as well. So we're addressing home-based care, looking at telehealth delivery. We have a new electronic health record system that we'll be implementing, and then we also changed our billing vendor to improve some of the billing rev cycle in the community. And that's the high-level summary for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hofstetter. Any assembly members have questions of Mr. Hofstetter? Okay, thanks again, Mr. Hofstetter. That brings us to item 13 on today's agenda. That's the mayor's report. It's fairly short. Alaska Natives Without Land legislation. Alaska's federal delegation plans to reintroduce the landless native legislation soon. Comments and questions regarding the transfer of ownership of federal lands and infrastructure to the Southeast Alaska Native communities that were not included in the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, ANCSA, may be emailed to assembly@petersburgak.gov. And on another note, all of the input that the borough has received from assembly members, from the public, from the landless natives, has been forwarded on to our federal lobbyist. A copy of Senate Bill 4891, which was introduced in the 116th Congress but failed to move to a vote of Congress for the end of the last session, is on the borough website for public viewing, along with maps of the federal lands selected for transfer to Haines, Ketchikan, Petersburg, Tenakee, and Wrangell. Next item on the mayor's report, Sexual Assault Awareness Month proclamation. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, otherwise acronym is SAM, S-A-A-M, and Mayor Jensen has issued a proclamation that's attached. We'll address that shortly. And this year's theme is We Can Build Safe Online Spaces. And I also proclaim Tuesday, April 6, 2021 as Wear Teal Tuesday in support of SAM. We are seeking letters of interest. The Assembly is seeking letters of interest from borough residents who wish to serve the community by filling a vacant seat on the following boards and commissions until the October 2021 municipal election. Planning Commission, 1 vacant seat. Public Safety Advisory Board, there are still 2 vacant seats. Letters of interest should be submitted to Clerk Thompson at the borough office located at 12 South Nordic Drive, or by mailing to Box 329, Petersburg, Alaska, 99833, or by emailing to dthompson@petersburgak.gov. And last meeting, I mentioned that I would not be available for the meeting of the 19th. I was assuming I was going to be traveling, but I'm involved in a herring fishery down around Craig, and it's running late this year. It could be due to the snow on the beaches and the cold water temperature. So I will be available for the meeting of April 19th, but I will not be available for the work session with the hospital board on the 28th. I'll be traveling for medical reasons. And that concludes my mayor's report. That brings us to the manager for, no, that doesn't. That brings us to Sexual Assault Awareness Month proclamation. So, Clerk Thompson, will you please lead most of this?
Thank you. Mayor's Proclamation, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, April 2021. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, a time to draw attention to the prevalence of sexual assault and educate individuals and communities about how to prevent it. Sexual harassment, abuse, and assault are widespread problems. We know in the United States alone, nearly 1 in 5 women and 1 in 67 men have been sexually assaulted at some time in their lives. And that 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 4 girls is sexually abused before the age of 18. Alaska has the nation's highest rate of sexual assault at 4 times the national average, which equates to 161.6 per 100,000 Alaska residents. Sexual harassment, assault, and abuse happen in all communities, and that includes online spaces. We are spending more and more of our lives online, whether for work, school, or entertainment. Unfortunately, with this increase in virtual connection comes an increase in online abuse and harassment. Consent and boundaries can be violated online in a number of ways, and the trauma of online abuse is all too real for many survivors. But each of us has the power to change that. We can all make a difference to ensure that our online communities are safe and respectful for everyone. 2021 marks the 20th anniversary of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and the theme of this year's campaign is We Can Build Safe Online Spaces. The campaign calls on us to create online spaces that are built on the foundational values of practicing consent, keeping kids safe, and supporting survivors. Petersburg joins other advocates and communities across Alaska and the nation in supporting victims of sexual assault and preventing online abuse. Together, we can build safe online spaces now and into the future.
Thank you, Clerk Thompson. And with that being read, therefore, I, Mark Jensen, Mayor of the Petersburg Borough, hereby proclaim April 2021 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month and April 6th, 2021 as Wear Teal Tuesday. So that is now that brings us to the manager's report. Manager Beesbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Visitation at the assisted living continues. We ask people to check our mitigation plan on the Borough website or call 772-2445 before you show up. That way you can get any questions answered. We're scheduling our annual window replacement for elderly housing. We've ordered 5 replacement windows to be installed this spring. We're still looking for a 30 and a 40-hour resident assistant position at assisted living. Applications can be found on the Borough website. Donations for the Deck Out the Deck project total $69,104 to date. We are continuing to add to the funds, and our goal is now $112,000. The initial estimate of $82,000 due to price increases of material and shipping during the pandemic. A large portion of the needed materials were purchased from a $32,000 grant from PIA, which is included in the total funds above. Once the weather gets better, foundation work on the deck will begin. We would like to thank all those who have gave and donated to the project so far. Every little bit helps to reach our goal. Huge thank you to Sally Dwyer for working tirelessly on this project. Our seniors deserve the very best we can do to make their daily lives healthier, cared for, and loved. Thanks to the Petersburg Medical Center doctors who continue to see our residents for routine appointments at assisted living. And as a reminder, our food service group, the Mountain View Food Service, continues to cook and deliver meals 5 days a week. They served over 1,000 meals in the month of March. Please call food service at 772-4331 to make a reservation. Rock and Road continues to delay a startup on the Scow Bay Pump Station project due to our weather. They will, we hope, start sometime in April if the weather cooperates. Power and Light staff will begin to exercise the power plant in preparation for the annual SEPA shutdown. Ensuring all engines will perform as needed and refreshing operations for staff is important. The shutdown is scheduled for the first 10 days in June. SEPA reports that a tentative schedule for the laying of the new submarine cable will occur on July 5th and 6th, with commissioning to be completed by September. And snowpack is excellent, with the equivalent of approximately 90 feet of lake level water on the mountainside at Tyee, and it's still increasing. The fire station is open to walk-in traffic. We are not allowing group tours at this time, and the training room continues to be closed to the public. Thanks to the fire volunteers who responded to a boat fire that was on land on March 31st. They did amazing work with a small group of responders. Thanks for their time and effort. The work has begun on the motor pool shop repair project, starting with cleaning and selective demolition of fire-damaged building components. And maintenance has been working on our heating systems and updating keys and door hardware in some facilities. We're very proud and excited to welcome Julie Anderson as the facility supervisor and Scott Burt as the aquatic supervisor at Parks and Rec. Their passion and dedication to our community will help our department flourish as we move into the future. Congratulations to Julie and Scott. Thanks to everyone who filled out our Parks and Rec survey, either online or at the facility. All of their responses will be reviewed by the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, management, and staff. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. The Rotary Club has officially purchased the Sandy Beach playground equipment. It is slated to be delivered toward the end of May. Landless questions that were received, as the mayor said, received by the borough have been forwarded to our federal lobbyist, Senator Rakowski's office, and the landless group. These will be posted on the borough's website, and the borough will post the answers once they have been received. Additional questions and comments can be sent directly to Senator Murkowski's office and the Landless Group. The Borough and PMEA were unable to come to agreement on a new labor contract. Both parties have agreed to engage in services of a mediator to help move the process closer to resolution. The Borough and PMC continue to remind people of the importance of getting the COVID-19 vaccine. It will help us keep the schools in-person learning and having a more normal Little Norway and 4th of July celebrations. It's up to all of us to do our part to end the pandemic. The Borough's federal priority top items for funding has been delivered to our federal lobbyists so it can be reviewed with the delegation. And the police department completed police officer oral boards last week. We have 2 conditional job offers out pending polygraph, medical examination, and psychological evaluation. And that is it for my report.
Thank you, Manager Giesbrecht. Are there any questions from the Assembly of the Manager? Okay, hearing none, that brings us to item 15, unfinished business, ordinances for third and final reading. There's one ordinance for third and final reading. That's ordinance 2021-04. This is an ordinance amending chapter 3.76, administrative officers and appeals process of the Borough Code to update the list of administrative officers to include the registered nurse contracted for Mountain View Manor Assisted Living and to update the title of the Mountain View Manor Director position. I'd entertain a motion to approve this in its third and final reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and a second. Is there any discussion on ordinance 2021-04? Hearing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, do we have currently a registered nurse on staff full-time at the manor? I'm not sure.
Manager Giesbrecht, could you answer that question?
Yeah, Mindy Enriquez and is our contract RN. She does not work full-time, but works kind of on an on-call basis when needed, and basically works she's got a contract with the Borough that we can call her in when needed.
Does that answer your question, Member Bucci? Member Bucci, are you still on the line?
Yeah, right.
Dropped off the line.
Okay, does the operator try to call him back?
I'll call right out. Okay, sorry, we're reconnected.
Thank you.
Member Bucci, did you hear the response of the manager, or did you drop the call?
Yes, I did, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. That is the last. If there's no other questions or discussion on ordinance 2021-04, will the clerk please call the roll?
Bob?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Chelsea?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance 2021-04 passes unanimously with a 6-0 vote in its third and final reading. That brings us on to item 16, new business. First item under new business, ordinance 2021-05. This is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2021 budget for known changes. It adjusts the budget to transfer funds from the general fund to the property development fund, delegate funds to the purchase of the new E911 system, delegate funds to the motor pool shop, alternate modifications, delegate funds to the Southeast Storm Local Emergency Disaster Fund to repair the city shop culvert failure, and delegate funds to repair the Ira 2 Street sewer main. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its first reading.
So moved.
Second. Motion's been made and a second. Any discussion on ordinance 2021-05?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could, please.
Yes, is this Member Kinsinger or?
Member Lynn. I'd like to, for the public's to hear, those funds that, if we could have Jody give us a little breakdown of where those funds are coming from and what they're intended for, I would appreciate it.
Is Jody on the line with us today? I don't see her name on the
I'm here,
list.
Mr. Mayor. So a few of these items have already been approved by the Assembly in resolution. However, to change numbers in budgets, it needs to be done by ordinance, which takes 3 readings. If you remember, in March, we discussed in the budget policy document that we had such a large surplus from last year about putting 50% of it into the property development fund. Currently, the property development fund is at a cash balance of $264,000. This would move an additional $669,000 into that fund. This fall, you approved a resolution to purchase new E911 system equipment. The Homeland Security grant funded portion of this expense was previously budgeted for $285,000, but the E911 expenses coming from the E911 fund were not in the budget, and this is $87,000. There's currently a balance of $333,000 in that fund, so there's plenty of money available, and this is exactly what that fund was created for. Property Development Fund, $55,000. In February, the Assembly approved the motor shop alternate modifications, those 3 modification alternates, and that funding was going to come from the Property Development Fund. That hadn't been budgeted. The other modifications up at the Motor Pool Fund were being paid for with insurance receipts, but these modifications weren't going to be covered by insurance. The next budget amendment was for the storm that we had. We found out that FEMA is offering assistance if there was any damage. There was quite a bit of damage up at the Public Works Department with culvert failure, and we hope that FEMA will reimburse it. Chris is on the line if you have more questions about that. And the last item is wastewater Ira 2 Street sewer main. Carl Hagerman requested that we transfer funds to that project, and he's probably on the line too if you have more questions about that.
Thank you, Jody. Does that answer those questions? Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Cotta?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is for Mr. Cotta. Chris, we're going to fix that culvert whether or not we get the FEMA reimbursement or not. Is that correct?
Yeah, we don't really have a choice whether or not to go ahead with repairs on that. It would cause a major problem for us if we get more heavy rains and have not made repairs. So we're hoping for FEMA funding, but if that for some reason doesn't pan out, then we will be looking to fund that project using some other source of borough funds. I talked to Jody a little bit about that earlier, but we didn't really identify where we would try to draw that from. Like I say, we're hopeful that we can get FEMA funding as there are some existing disaster declarations. So we're going to proceed with that in mind, and if it doesn't work out, then we would come back and try to fund that from a different source.
And that's still scheduled to happen sometime this summer?
Yeah, that's our intention, would be to get this fixed before we go into fall and rainy season again.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
Yep. A follow-up to Member Kessinger's. The source of funds, if that doesn't come through for FEMA, what's the thinking now where we would pull that?
I think that probably Chris, do you want to do it, or I'll answer, and then if you want to fill in anything, you can. I would think the Property Development Fund probably, which is another reason why moving some of the surplus money into the Property Development Fund is important to fund emergency projects like this that can't be delayed.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or discussions on ordinance 2021-05 and its first reading? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chelsea,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes. Ordinance 2021-05 passes unanimously, 6-0 in its first reading. Excuse me. That brings us to ordinance 2021-06. This is an ordinance determining that property conveyed to the borough in a tax foreclosure proceeding shall not be retained for a public purpose and shall hereafter be sold. And there is two pieces of property. They're on crippled out maps and descriptions on the website. And in this ordinance, I'll entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its first reading. So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we passed this ordinance after 3 readings, and then the idea would be to auction this land off, or is that the process? Thank you.
Jody, can you answer that question?
Yeah, sure. So once this is passed in 3 readings, it actually is going to come back to the assembly one more time with a resolution on how this property will be sold, whether it's going to be sealed bid or outcry auction, and what we're going to sell it at. Normally it's about assessed value plus the cost of the sale. And so you'll determine all of that. So it'll probably be May, if not later, that these will be, that this will come back to you. And then you guys will determine the length, if it is a mail-in, like the length of time that it'll be open and whatnot.
Okay, thank you, Jody.
Thanks for the explanation, Jody. So for the public listening, it'll be three readings with a public hearing on the second reading, and it sounds like it comes to us, if it passes, in resolution form to decide how to dispose of the property. Any other discussion on this? Clerk call the roll.
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes. Okay, ordinance 2021-06 passes unanimously. Next ordinance is ordinance 2021-07. This is an ordinance determining that the property conveyed to the borough in a tax foreclosure proceeding shall not be retained for a public purpose and shall hereafter be sold. It's the same as the previous ordinance, I believe, but just a different piece of property. So I would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-07 in its first reading. So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So these are just the same 2 parcels, correct?
I believe there are 2 different parcels. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's
Jody?
2 different parcels. So you just approve the first one, and then this is just the second one with a different owner or previous owner. The borough owns it now.
Okay, thank you. It's just thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just the same side of Kupinuk close to Green Rocks.
Just south, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion on ordinance 2021-07? Will the clerk call the roll?
Jeff,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-07 passes unanimously with a 6-0 vote in its first reading. That brings us to item D under new business, and this is something I asked to have on the agenda. Governor Dunleavy welcomes support from Southeast communities and businesses in defense of the 2020 Tongass exemption rule drafted by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in October of 2020. Like it says here, I requested this to see if the Assembly wanted to decide if the people of Borough would like to support the Tongass exemption. So if that's the way it's worded, I'd entertain a motion to support the Tongass exemption.
So moved.
Is that a motion by Member Lynn?
It is.
Is there a second for that motion? Okay, with no second, the motion fails for lack of a second. Okay, next item is fiscal year 2021-2022 Assembly Travel and Training Budget. Clerk Thompson drafted the Assembly Travel and Training Budget for the Assembly's amendment and or approval. So I would entertain a motion to approve the travel and training budget as proposed. So moved.
Second.
Okay, I lost connection there a little bit, but I believe there was a motion and a second. So is there any discussion on the 2021-2022 travel and training budget?
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make an amendment that I'm a lot for the amount of this. We haven't been back to Washington, D.C. since 2018, and I'm not sure if we'll get the opportunity to go this year, but I'd like to see, and I think Derek sent me or us some kind of figure of what it cost the last time we went, and maybe if she can help me with the number, I'd like to make an amendment to plan for a trip like that, whether or not we go, but at least we had it in there as a placeholder, and if we don't go, we can just go back to the general fund. So, thank you.
Do you have a dollar value on that, Clerk Thompson? So, a rough value?
I do, Mayor Jensen. I estimate it would cost between $6,000 to $7,000 for 2 people to travel to DC.
Okay, so Member Mucci, would you like to make a motion to add that with that dollar value to this proposed travel and training budget?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay.
$6,000.
Right, 6,000 to 7,000. Member Mucci made a motion. Is there a second? Is there a second to the amendment? Okay, there's no second, so that amendment fails. And if it looks like, in my opinion, if we need a trip to Washington, D.C., if it's requested by our lobbyists, if we're traveling at all, we might not even be attending any of these other proposed expenditures, Southeast Conference, Alaska Municipal League, etc. So we're back on the proposed travel and training budget. Is there any other discussion on the proposed travel and training budget?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I might.
Mr. Mayor.
Member Stan Greger.
Thank you, sir. You briefly touched on a point I wanted to raise before we were just after the amendment failed. I'm going to vote for it as it is right now. I think with the future being uncertain as it is, this is a good enough placeholder as it is. If travel becomes more restrictive, well, obviously that money won't be used. And if, like you had mentioned, things become more freely available, and the delegation wants it to come visit DC, we can obviously adapt on the fly. I guess I see approving this more as something to put in place and that may need to be amended later, but I'll be voting for it as is today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Sangregor. Member Kensinger, did you have input in this? Was that you?
Yes, I agree with what basically what Jay said. It's a placeholder, and if the need arises, we can always amend the budget at a later date.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the proposed travel and training budget for 2021-2022?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Member Lynn here. I've got I looked at the note that the manager sent to us about taking himself totally out of any kind of travel for fiscal year 22, and I think there needs to be a placeholder in there someplace for travel for the manager, because I think there's going to be times here in this COVID time, so to speak, and changes that he really does need to attend, chance to attend it, whatever that might be. And I'm just asking now for a placeholder in there of to do that. And I would, and if with that, I would move that we put $2,000 in there for a potential for the manager for possible travel in 2022.
Okay, I missed that motion, Member Lynn. I don't know why my phone just got weak.
I'll second the motion to add $2,000 as a placeholder for the manager to potentially travel in this fiscal year.
Okay, so the motion was to add $1,000 to this proposed travel and training budget so the manager can attend a function or two if deemed necessary. So, any discussion on the amendment? Clerk, call the roll on the amendment.
David,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jeff,
Sure.
Jay,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Just lost, cutting in and out. You're cutting in and out. Am I coming in clear? My vote is yes.
yes, we did hear you. And everyone voted
Okay,
yes.
So that passes unanimously. We're on to the main topic, the main motion, travel and training budget as amended. Is there any other discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Chelsea,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Okay, the Assembly travel and training budget as amended passes unanimously with a 6-0 vote. That brings us to approval of the borough's negotiation team members for the upcoming IBEW collective bargaining agreement. And Manager Giesbrecht is requesting approval of the following borough staff to serve as members of the borough's negotiation team for the upcoming IBEW collective bargaining agreement negotiations. Manager Giesbrecht, who will be the spokesman, Utility Director Hagerman, Finance Director Tao, and Clerk and Human Resource Director Thompson. I'd entertain a motion to approve this request.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on this formation of the negotiating team? Hearing none, will the clerk call the roll?
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Chelsea,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Okay, that request passes unanimously, and that brings us on to correspondence received since March 19th, 2021, and it's all listed on the agenda here today and on the Borough website, and it will be updated at the next meeting for communications we've heard recently. Okay, Assembly discussion items. First, Assembly member comments. Are there any comments today from the Assembly members?
Yes, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor?
Member Kinsinger.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just want to let the community know that the Petersburg Borough was one of the top 3 counties in the United States that had one of the highest vaccination rates. I want to encourage everybody in the community to get vaccinated. This is important. If we all get vaccinated, we can do everything that we like to do. I know there's a lot of people that will not get vaccinated, but if you're sitting on the fence, just haven't had the opportunity, whatever it takes for you to get motivated to get out and get that vaccine, please do it.
Okay, thank you. Member Mucci, were you asking to make a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were several people that called or wrote letters regarding the anti-discrimination ordinance that's been talked about over the last couple of weeks. I plan to have it on the agenda for the next meeting with possible changes to it, and we need to figure out if the Assembly level, if we want to continue or introduce that, or if we have some concerns. I think the folks who introduced it and talked about it at the last meeting need to know what we're thinking, and if we're not in support of that current wording, we need to sort out what wording would be acceptable. So I'll have it on the agenda for the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Any other Assembly members have comments they would like to make today? Hearing none, that brings us to recognitions. Are there any recognitions from the Assembly or from staff today?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, hearing none. Member Tremblay.
Thank you. I just wanted to say really quickly a thank you to Ellen at the LAO for all of her years of service to the community, and a good luck to Matt for taking over. That is a detail-oriented job that our community very much needs, and they are there as a resource if anybody has any interest in the actions at the state level. I really enjoy being on the email blast, getting an update on what's been going on in the legislature. And if you are curious about anything that they are doing, they are happy to hunt down that information and give you that resource. So thank you to Ellen for all of her years of service. And again, good luck to Matt.
Okay, any other recognitions today? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to discussion items. Conflict of interest. Member Mucci asked to have this discussion item on the agenda today. Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that most of us understood how the conflict of interest worked. We've run into it a few times here regarding the landless legislation, and I just perhaps we'll talk about it at a later date, but I just wanted to thank the city clerk and the city attorney for providing that information. Thank you.
Yeah, just for the people listening, we have, the clerk has sent out information reminding the Assembly of the proper protocol for recusing yourself, etc., if you have a conflict of interest. Any other input by other Assembly members on this topic? Okay, that brings us to upcoming landless legislation. Member Mucci, you asked to have this on the agenda today.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yeah, as you know, that there are some concerns. A few I have, and I'm looking forward to having some of those questions resolved. I know the community, several members of the community had issues with them the last time October, November, when we had that public meeting about when that legislation was moving. And if it's the same legislation, we've heard from some members of the community who commented that the cabins at Portage Bay were out of this legislation, and it appears that that's not the case. So I think if the maps are going to remain the same, the concerns are going to remain the same, and I'm hoping that the community has a chance to look at the pending new legislation, and if there's any changes to the map, that the community gets a chance to look at them, so that if there were issues in the past, we should address those. And if this is a good deal for the community and the landless members, that we should move forward with it. But until we get the concerns addressed, then I think I'll continue to have a few questions. And I just wanted to say thanks to the community who put in their comments. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the intent, I think, of this whole discussion, is to get clarification on the new legislation and maps, to see if there's any changes, and gather as much public comment as we can. So if us as an assembly want to take a position, we're as educated as we can be. So any other members want to comment on this discussion item? Hearing none, that brings us to Frederick Point East election. Assembly Member Ricci asked for this to be on the agenda as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we talked about this last year. I'm not exactly sure what time of the year. I don't know if it was early in the year, but I thought we got to a point where there was going to be several steps involved in getting the tax structure changed for the folks who have property or live out at Frederick Point East. And I've been kind of bugging the borough clerk, and she's been very patient, and I think she has an update on where we are in that process. And I don't mean to put her on the spot, but I just wanted to know where we were going with this, or where we are in that process. Thank you.
Clerk Thompson, did we not vote to put it on the 2021 fall ballot?
We did, yes. So I need to bring an ordinance before you for 3 readings in order to get it on the ballot. And the first reading of that ordinance will be at the April 19th meeting.
Okay, thank you for the update. Does that clarify your, I don't know if I call them concerns, Member Ricci?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is a proposed executive session. In a discussion with the manager today, he would like as many assembly members to be available for this as that can be. I will not be able to attend this today, so that's my input. Manager Giesbrecht, do you have any comments on your thoughts for this executive session?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can't get, particularly you and the majority of the rest of the assembly there, I'd prefer to postpone it. We do have to kind of get this resolved before we run out of time in scheduling our meeting with IBEW, but we can do that at the next meeting.
Okay, so does that work for the assembly members? I understand there's a couple other assembly members that potentially could not attend today. I will be available to be. Member Ricci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, if I could get the borough clerk to text me the cell phone number to call in, I'll give her a go.
Okay, well, I won't be able to attend. We are going to, try to catch some more herring. That's my excuse. So if you want to continue and have the executive session, Manager Giesbrecht, I could be filled in at a later date. I won't have any input today. That's your call. So if you want us to move forward with this executive session today, I will adjourn this meeting and call for the executive session to discuss IBEW negotiations.
Mr. Mayor, this is Steve. I would prefer to have you present if that's at all possible. Are the rest of the assembly potentially available at the next meeting?
Member Stanton Gregor will be.
Member Tremblay will be absent next meeting.
Member Lynn will be here.
I should be available, but I won't be present in the chambers.
Okay, so I will be available at the next meeting. I'm assuming, not knowing, but I'm just guessing, Member Norheim will be done with the herring fishery in SIPTA, so he should be available. At the manager's request, I would propose that we postpone this until the meeting of April 19th at 6 p.m. So
moved.
Do we need a motion for that and a vote on that? Probably, since it was listed on the agenda. What do you think, Member Stanton?
I would just said so moved. I think it'd be appropriate to turn it into an action item and postpone it till the next one. So I would move we postpone it till the second meeting in April.
Second.
I'll second. Okay, motion's been made and seconded to move the executive session to discuss labor negotiations with the IBEW to the April 19th meeting. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Chelsea?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Get a vote from Bob.
Yes, Bob said yes.
Okay, so that passes unanimously. We will have the executive session at the next meeting. So with that being said, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you on the 19th.
The present but not present is so funny to me. He's like, what
Yeah, really.
what an existential existence. I'm here, I'm not here, I'm there, I'm everywhere.
Oh, I said I'll be present.